I looked into, I found out a piece of information I'd never known before. I actually was looking at and thinking about what is Torah to start off this talk. What do Jews mean by Torah? I found out, which I hadn't known before, that we actually don't know. Scholars are not really sure where the word comes from. It's like of all the words, they're not really sure where the word for Torah comes from, and they're not sure what it means actually. There's a definite possibility, although this is not definitive. I guess probably at this point there will not be a definitive answer. I'm not sure there's anything more that the scholars can look into on this, but it's possible that it comes from the Akkadian root tertu, which meant oracle. It was an oracle. And in Hebrew also, the word, another possible root from Hebrew is yara, yud resh he, which also has to do with predicting the future. So it's actually quite possible that Torah was originally sort of meant, how do you see into the future? What do you need to know to sort of successfully negotiate the future? It gives you what you need so that you can make it successfully in the world if you know the future. That also is, I would say, a function of wisdom. That is one of the reasons we want to become wise. As we become wise, we sort of learn how to negotiate being in these bodies and being in this world, and it certainly affects what will happen then in the future. It's really clear from looking at how Torah is referred to, though, in our tradition, that there is certainly one really well-defined sense of Torah as being a sacred text, and particularly the 5 books of Moses, and then the extended Tanakh, with the writings and the prophets, that's certainly considered Torah. And then there's certainly a strong tradition for them, including the oral Torah, which are the rabbinic laws written down in the first and form of the Mishnah, and then in the Talmud, which is a commentary of the Mishnah. That certainly those are traditionally considered Torah, and in one sense, when we talk about Torah study and studying the Torah, that is clearly what is meant, is studying those particular texts. But it's also just as clear from the breadth of Jewish history on that Jews always meant more than that. That they always used the word as well in talking about wisdom and learning. So it sort of makes sense to use it as a really legitimate term as well, to say, what the Torah of money. And we have some friends who wrote a book, The Torah of Money, and as these titles I'm using, you can say, you can use the word to see what is sort of the wisdom of such and such that you can get from such and such, and that certainly is the direction that I want to take the rest of most of my remarks in. Although I will also use texts about wisdom. So I want to talk mostly about wisdom and the acquiring of wisdom. In Hebrew, we talk about wisdom as chachma. But we want to also think about what is wisdom. And in the Jewish mystical tradition, we haven't dealt so firmly. We haven't dealt extensively with talking about the symbol system of Jewish mysticism in these retreats. But many of you know of the basic system called the 10 Sfirot, the 10 divine emanations, and Chachma, or wisdom, is one of those 10 emanations. And in fact, is depending on which system you look at, there's different systems of which 10 are the 10 Sfirot. Some systems start with Keter as the first of the Sfirot. In those systems, the next thing, and Keter is sort of that aspect of the divine, sort of before emanation starts. So the Sfirot are sometimes considered to be sort of emanations, or steps in a process from which, steps of the process in which the creation is, which sort of finishes with this physical world we reside in, sort of a description of the steps that the divine energy goes through until it manifests as physicality, which is sort of the last of the 10 sefirot, called Malchut, or this kingdom. And so the first one is either considered to be Keter, which generally is thought of as sort of, that's before any emanation happened. And so, and since it's before any emanation happened, sometimes our systems start with Chachma, which is then the next, it's either the second sefirah, if you're counting Keter, or in some systems it's considered the first of the 10 emanations. Now, I don't want to focus so much on the esoteric, but only just to point out in that sense the primacy still of the concept of wisdom. Or this idea of wisdom is really the beginning of the process of the divine coming into this world. And the Zohar really takes that and talks about it extensively. And so it takes the words Bereshit bara Elohim, which is the beginning of the story of creation in Genesis, so which generally is translated something like when, depending again on the translation, when God began creating, or in a beginning God began creating, and says it makes the Zohar makes a translation from the word Reshit to Chachma. It actually says that that Reshit is Chachma. We have a few quotes about that, both in Psalms, verse 111, chapter 1, Psalm 111, verse 10, and in Proverbs, chapter 9, verse 10. There's actually a teaching. It says, Reshit Chachma Yirat Adonai. I'm going to get to that teaching in a minute, that the beginning of wisdom is the fear of God. But the mystics, and especially the Zohar, they actually equated Reshit and Chachma. They come together in that in those phrases. But the mystics said that the word Reshit, when it says Reshit, that actually refers to Chachma. And that, so according to the mystics, God, it was through Chachma, Chachma, Bereshit, they say, in the Zohar, they say, in Chachma, or through Chachma, through wisdom, bara Elohim, was created Elohim. What we call God is actually sort of a lower level God that's called Elohim, and even that was created through Chachma. That somehow the supernal divine, I know if you're nodding, you must really be in outer space, because if you understand this. Yeah, I'm really just trying to point to the primacy, that in our tradition there's actually a very deep understanding that somehow wisdom came first, before any of this. That there was a, and so in that sense the Zohar, one person tried to translate it more into language we could use. He said that if you'd like to imagine the emanation of the Sefirot in terms of the Big Bang, Chachma is the singularity with no size, but with the laws of nature already instantiated. So sort of there's the singularity, and everything that's going to happen, the rules sort of what's going to happen, the plan of what's going to happen after it bangs is already there in the singularity. There's nothing there, but there is the divine wisdom which organizes all of creation.